She trusted him. She believed him when he said that things would be different, that things would be better. So, she spoke her mind. She spoke her heart. She wrote about the things that could change people's lives, change a nation, change the world. She trusted him. Surrounded by crying and praying women who feared for their lives, she refused to give in to despair, to bow her head in supplication to political, religious, and social systems designed to enslave the bodies and minds of women. These invisible chains rubbed her raw. She trusted him, and he repaid her trust by locking her in a jail cell. Despite this betrayal, it was in prison that she gained her freedom. It was in this prison that she discovered within herself the savage and dangerous woman who would speak for millions of her sisters, forced to hide behind a veil of fear and silence.
You've planted your dreams. It's time to release. No more fear. No more fear. Surrender in her. Trust you won't fall. Time to fly. Time to fly.
Hello, my bright lighters. Welcome to another episode of the Aquitaine Project, the podcast all about learning life lessons from women of yesterday and today who shine their light from different centuries, cultures, and corners of the earth, making it possible for each of us to create our own light and shine it forward. I'm Marlo Mead, your host, guide, and fellow traveler on a journey of self-discovery. So, if you're ready to step into the light of some pretty remarkable women and learn a little, grow a little, laugh a little, and shine a lot, you're in the right place.
Free your soul.
When Nawal el-Saadawi's mother taught her how to write, she would write her name Nawal, which means gift in Arabic, over and over. Then she would write her mother's name next to hers. One day, her father saw the two names side by side and crossed out her mother's name and replaced it with his own. When she asked him why he crossed out his mother's name, he replied, "It is God's will." This was the first time Nawal had ever heard of God, and she was not impressed. She decided she could not love a God or anyone who would strike out her mother's name as if it did not exist. When Nawal's grandmother told her, "One boy is worth 15 girls," she became angry at the realization that sons were more highly valued than daughters. She refused to accept she was less worthy or less important than her brothers who were given preferential treatment. At the age of 6, she was subjected to female genital mutilation. In 1941, at the age of 10 years old, her family tried to marry her off. This was not an uncommon practice among Egyptian families, but Nawal refused to be bound by cultural customs. So she blackened her teeth to make herself less attractive, and without fear of the consequences, she tipped the coffee tray over on her would-be suitor, a sign of disrespect and defiance. Her father, aunts, and grandmother were furious. It was her mother who came to her defense, as she would so many times in Nawal's life. It was her mother's words, "Throw Nawal in the fire, and she will come out unhurt," that gave Nawal the courage and bravery to stand up for herself, and in the years to come walk through many fires as she stood up for millions of others. The things we experience throughout our life can have profound effects on how we view the world. Nawal's childhood experiences became the foundation for her activism, but it was her work as a physician and psychiatrist that led her to speak out against the cultural, religious, and political systems that blatantly oppressed Egyptian and other Arabic women. She graduated from medical school in 1955, and it was during her medical practice that she began to observe the physical and psychological problems of her female patients. While working as a doctor in her home village, she once again came face to face with the inequities endured by the women in her village. After attempting to protect one of her patients from an abusive husband, she was reprimanded and sent back to Cairo, where she continued her studies and eventually became the director of the Ministry of Public Health, as well as the chief editor of a health journal and the assistant general secretary of the Medical Association in Egypt. Always outspoken and willing to confront women's issues head-on, in 1972 she published her book, Women and Sex, the first of many books and articles challenging the aggression perpetrated against women's bodies, including female genital mutilation, and started a campaign against the practice. She was condemned by political and religious leaders alike. Her book was banned, and Nawal was dismissed from her position at the Ministry of Health. She lost her position as chief editor of her health journal and her job as assistant general secretary. She was, in modern terms, canceled. Despite these setbacks, Nawal continued defending the rights of women and fighting for changes in a deeply conservative political culture. In her later writings and increasingly outspoken political activism, she continued to address controversial issues such as prostitution, domestic violence, and religious fundamentalism. In 1981, under the presidency of Anwar Sadat, she was charged with crimes against the state and jailed for 3 months. That same year, she was named Time magazine's Woman of the Year. Behind bars, she wrote her prison memoirs with black eyeliner and toilet paper that was smuggled to her by fellow prisoners and began forming the Arab Women's Solidarity Association that promoted the participation of women in social, economic, cultural, and political life. This organization became synonymous with the slogan, "Lifting the Veil from the Mind." Boy, I'm sure that did not sit well with the patriarchal fundamentalists. After President Sadat's assassination, she was released from prison, only to face death threats by Muslim extremists. In 1982, Nawal founded the Arab Women's Solidarity Association and later served as the editor of the magazine publication Al Noon. In 1991, the government came knocking again and closed down the publication Al Noon and shut down the Arab Women's Solidarity Association. Due to her outspoken views, Nawal continued to face frequent legal challenges from political and religious opponents, including accusations of apostasy and heresy, which means she refused to follow, obey, or recognize the Islam faith. In 1993, she fled to the U.S. after death threats were issued against her by religious groups. During her 3-year exile, she taught and lectured across the U.S. and Europe on women's rights issues and continued to speak out against all forms of female oppression. Get this. In 2002, a legal attempt was made by an Islamist lawyer to forcibly divorce her from her husband. Fiercer with age, Nawal made a run for president against longtime incumbent President Mubarak in the 2005 elections. He severely restricted her public appearances, seriously hindering her campaign. I wonder what he was afraid of. In 2008, she finally won the heresy case brought against her by Al-Azhar University, the major center of Islamic learning. In 2011, at the age of 79, she joined demonstrators arm in arm in Tahrir Square in Cairo in protests that led to the overthrow of President Mubarak. In 2018, during a BBC interview, it was suggested by the reporter that it would be in Nawal's best interest to tone down her political and religious criticisms. I actually cringed when I heard this, and as I watched Nawal's body language on the screen, I could see this type of suggestion or question really angered her. Nawal replied, "No, I should be more outspoken. I should be more aggressive because the world is becoming more aggressive and we need people to speak loudly against injustices. I speak loudly because I am angry." Nawal el-Saadawi, an Egyptian author, activist, and physician who became an emblem for the struggle for women's rights in the patriarchal Arab world, died in 2021. She wrote over 50 books, including short stories, plays, fiction, and nonfiction, dealing with the status of Arab women and their oppression by men through religion, politics, and deeply rooted cultural practices. Despite a life of controversy, censorship, death threats, and even imprisonment and exile, she continued to fan the flames of change, despite the fear of personal, professional, political, or religious persecution. Sisters, many of us may not be able to fully relate to all of her life experiences. I know I can't. As an American woman of multiracial ancestry, never in my life have I experienced the levels of oppression faced by Nawal or millions of other women around the world. This fiercely courageous bright lighter has so much to teach us about standing up for what we believe and having the courage of our convictions. So, let's figure out ways to embody this courageous spirit and stand up for what and who we believe. I believe when we truly believe in something, it becomes a part of who we are. I also believe when we stand up for our beliefs, they become part of the human record. It doesn't matter if it's a rally of thousands seeking justice from a tyrannical government, a contentious school board meeting debating education curriculum, or a silent vigil on a street corner mourning the loss of life. Once we take a stand, our energy is released into the world and has the potential to attract others who are dissatisfied with the current situation and who share our beliefs and values. Now, I'm not saying you have to display your beliefs and values on the world stage like Nawal El-Saadawi did for most of her life. Our beliefs and values are just as important and meaningful in our everyday lives, in the little things and the big things we feel compelled to take a stand on. But before we can stand up for what we believe, we must define what those beliefs are. We must get clear on what we are willing to sacrifice on the altar of those beliefs. Like Nawal, we must know what we are willing to lose: our job, our reputation, friends or family, our homeland, or potentially our life. How far are we willing to go? This is a very personal decision and one that should not be made lightly. As I said before, when we believe in something, it becomes part of who we are, and the values we hold dear become our guiding light as we make our way through this life. So, how do we define the beliefs and values that we'll stick with no matter what? First and foremost, we have to figure out what we actually believe in and what we value. It might sound simple, but I'm not going to lie. This can be a daunting exercise for some of us. First, let's distinguish between what beliefs and values are. Beliefs are assumptions we hold to be true and may or may not be based on facts. Beliefs can be rigid, causing divisions, and range from what we believe about creation to what is the best flavor of ice cream in the world. Butter pecan, of course. Values motivate our actions and help us make decisions. They're universal concepts which can unite or divide people. Values can include concepts like fairness, justice, freedom, and equality. Here's another way to look at it. Beliefs don't need proof. Values stem from our beliefs. Beliefs are assumptions we make about others and ourselves. Values govern the way we behave and interact with others. Beliefs grow from what we experience and think about. Values are things we deem important. Beliefs affect our morals. Values affect behavior and character. You may have other ways of distinguishing between beliefs and values, and that's up to you. I personally think life experience has much to do with how we define our beliefs and values. When Nawal suffered female genital mutilation, known as FGM, as a 6-year-old little girl, she experienced a deeply rooted social and religious practice designed to disempower women's sexual pleasure and ensure female monogamy. Later in her life, as a result of this experience as a child and her experiences as a physician, she came to believe all genital mutilation or circumcision, male or female, was a barbaric practice that she would work to eliminate. Her core belief that girls and women have a right to sexual health, as well as a right to their own bodies, led her to speak out loudly on the subject and write several fiction and nonfiction books addressing this issue. She took a stand, and it cost her dearly both professionally and personally. Like most of us, some of the beliefs I had when I was younger have evolved over time, and throughout my life I've developed some core beliefs that are indeed a part of who I am. By the time I was 18, I had developed some pretty deep-seated beliefs about certain things. For example, domestic and child abuse. My personal experiences growing up informed my beliefs about personal relationships. I believe all types of abuse, especially child abuse, whether perpetrated by a man or a woman, are unacceptable. You could say I have a zero tolerance for such behavior. Around those beliefs, I established a core value which states, I do not tolerate abuse in any form in relationships. My relationships are a fundamental part of my life, and there is no place for abuse in any healthy, loving, respectful relationship. Over the years, when I have had friends in abusive relationships, I never hesitated to voice both my concern and my opinions on the situation. Did I run the risk of alienating some people in my life? Absolutely. But my beliefs and my values would not let me remain silent. Here are a few ideas that might help you clarify your beliefs and values. When you can, give yourself some quiet time. Quiet your mind. Get comfortable and take some deep breaths. Then ask yourself these questions. Really listen to yourself and be as honest as you can when you give yourself the answers. Are you ready? Here we go. Ask yourself, what is important to me? What do I believe in? It doesn't have to be just one thing. We each have multiple things that are important to us. It might be family and friendship, your faith or your spiritual path, your work, your art, the environment, children, animals, world hunger, human rights, world peace. Only you know the answer. Then ask yourself why. Why do you believe in these things? Why are they important to you? I know exactly why I have a deep-rooted belief about any and all forms of abuse and well-defined values around my relationships. I saw firsthand the devastating effects abuse has on families, and especially children. Taking the time to really understand why we believe what we believe and value what we value helps us stay strong and grounded when those beliefs and values are challenged. What am I passionate about? What inspires me to take action? Sometimes our beliefs and core values reveal themselves through our actions. Let's just say you live next to someone who has a dog, and this dog is always chained to a tree in the backyard, no matter the weather. Day and night you can hear this poor dog barking or whining. You rarely see anyone feed it or give it water, and the people in the house yell at the dog constantly to shut up. You've called animal control, but for whatever reason, they refuse to act. This goes on for a while until finally you decide to take a stand. You go next door and talk to the owners about the dog's condition. The owners tell you to mind your own business. This doesn't sit well with you at all because you hold the belief that animals should be treated humanely and deserve a loving home. And you grew up valuing the joy and companionship animals can bring to our lives. So, one night, you go next door, take the dog, and bring it to your parents' house so the people next door can't find it. True story, you guys. Think of a situation when you took a stand for someone or something. Write down the reasons you felt so strongly to take action. What feelings motivated you to speak up or act? What were you willing to risk in that situation? What did you learn about yourself and your beliefs? Once you've come to an agreement with yourself about what you truly believe and what inspires you to take action, you might want to take things a step further. I know, I told you it might not be easy. The third part of this exercise is identifying the ideas, the ideals, and behaviors we value, those parts of us guided by our moral compass, and then coming up with your own personal value statements. There are many ideas and concepts we may value, and these values can overlap in different areas of our lives. They can be personal, such as family, faith, money, security, honesty, loyalty, or personal responsibility, just to name a few. Our values can also reflect our broader social ideas and what causes matter most to us, such as justice, human rights, civic duty or civil disobedience, environmentalism, animal rights, patriotism. By all means, you are not limited to this list. Come up with your own. Just make sure the values that you choose resonate with you. Once we have taken the time to identify the values that mean most to us, we can begin to craft our own personal value statement. Many of the articles you see online talk about creating value statements geared towards your career, and over the years I've crafted mine for that specific purpose. But since I started researching and getting to know Nawal and her story, I've decided to write a more personal value statement. Not that my professional values and personal values are that much different. They just focus on different aspects of my life. So here is a list of the values I hold most dear. Family always. This includes the people in my life that are part of my extended tribe, and that number keeps growing. My spiritual path. I embrace the seen and unseen worlds with love, respect, reverence, and magical wonder. Human dignity and respect in our individual and collective searches for happiness, liberty, and prosperity. Kindness and compassion. I was with a group of people recently, and one of them remarked that she tried to do 10 kind things each day. Imagine if everyone, everywhere, did 10 or 5 or even 1 kind or compassionate thing for someone else. I include kindness to animals in this as well. Just 1 kind thing a day would be billions of kind things. Billions with a B, you guys. Our world would be a completely different place, sisters. Over the next few weeks, I'll be working on creating these values and a few more of my values into my values to live by statement. There's no right or wrong way to write this. You can make individual statements for each value or write them in a paragraph or a letter to yourself to remind you of what you hold dear and what you stand for. There are plenty of examples out there, and as always, I've shared some links on the Aquitaine Project website for you to check out. Now, once you've written your statement, it's a great idea to post it where you can refer back to it easily. You could even write it on your phone and save it in your notes, or take a picture of it and keep it on your phone. You can print it out and frame it, hang it on your wall, or put it on your desk. Some of you more creative types might create a needlepoint or a cross stitch or a word cloud. A word cloud! A word cloud of your values. I love word clouds. Or better yet, a personal values vision board. This is right up my alley. The point is to keep it where you can refer back to it daily, but especially when you have big decisions or choices to make. Okay, we've distinguished between our beliefs and values. We've thought about them very carefully. We've come up with values that are important to us, and we'll work on creating our personal value statement, or in my case, my values vision board. Don't be jealous. But why? Why go through all the work to define our values and write them down? For me, it's a simple matter of reminding myself who I am at my very core and maintaining my personal power to make decisions for my life that align with my true self. Many of us at times have gone through life like a leaf on the wind, just letting ourselves be moved wherever the wind blows, going along with the crowd, not needing or wanting to think about the things that really matter to us. Sound familiar? Remember the game Follow the Leader, where everyone has to do exactly what the leader does and anyone who fails to follow is out? Playing Follow the Leader with our personal values can be a very dangerous proposition and might take us in directions we really, really don't want to go. No one should decide our values for us. We need to take responsibility for developing and articulating and aligning our values with how we want to live our lives. And when we are clear on our values and who we are, it is much easier to withstand the pressure, and there will be pressure, to renounce, change, or ignore our values. Yes, I know stating what we value, then standing up for those values are very different things. By standing up for what we believe in, we are expressing who we are and what we want out of life. We are putting ourselves on the line, and this can be very frightening. But sometimes sticking up for our beliefs and our values require us to let go of the fear of what others will think or what others will say, how others will react. Now, yes, there will be times when we stand up for what we believe and what we value that people will try to change our minds or put us down. That's fine. We live in a free country. But it's important to always keep our beliefs and values in mind. It doesn't hurt at all to hear others out. You need to. You need to listen to other points of view, but that doesn't mean you have to change what you believe in. One of the reasons I greatly respect Nawal El-Saadawi is the way she unequivocally stated her beliefs and lived by them. I may not agree with her stand on certain things, but I sure as hell can appreciate the fact that throughout her life, even when faced with extreme personal danger, she held fast to her values. She refused to be silent on matters that meant the most to her. Like I said, Standing up for our beliefs and values isn't always easy, but there are many ways we can express ourselves and support causes that align with our values. Attending marches, rallies, and gatherings allows us to add our voices with others who stand for what we believe. Along those same lines, we can join a group or association that represents a cause close to our heart. Seeking out and getting involved with organizations will connect us to like-minded people. There really is strength in numbers. If you can't find a group or organization that suits you, start one. Be the spark that ignites the fire that brings change. We can express our stands on issues that matter to us by writing. We can write to organizations that can positively affect outcomes. We can write to our Congress, our legislator, our representatives. If it's educational, write to your school board or superintendent. You can write to your city mayor or city council. The power of the pen, you guys, is a real thing. You see it all over the world in people like Nawal El-Saadawi, who wrote and wrote and wrote on what mattered to her. History has shown us time and time again that the written word can be the spark that starts a movement or even a revolution. Decades of fighting political, social, and religious patriarchy, enduring death threats, censorship, exile, and imprisonment. During her lifetime, Nawal El-Saadawi was the loudest voice for women's rights in the Arab world. Many consider her the godmother of the current feminist revolution in Egypt, a symbol and icon of the feminist struggle. She is a reminder that feminism is as indigenous to the Arab world as it is right here in the United States. Her fight against injustice and the marginalization of women is a universal one. It is reported that 12 hours before her death, this statement was tweeted from her Twitter account. "I am a girl of God, and my thinking is free." Her brutal honesty and unwavering dedication to improving the political and sexual rights of women inspired generations. In her writings, in her work, in her life, she dared to speak the truth, and her legacy will live on. So, in honor of this outspoken and courageous Brightlighter, let's challenge ourselves to clearly define our personal beliefs and values, then stand by them no matter how the world tries to keep us silent. Why I love this woman. They said to her, "You are a savage and dangerous woman." She said to them, "I am speaking the truth, and the truth is savage and dangerous." On March 21st, 2021, a savage and dangerous woman died. She was 89 years old. She was a doctor, a writer, and a storyteller of the horrible oppression faced by her sisters in the Arab world and beyond. She was a dissident, a revolutionary, a champion of women's rights. But do not call her a feminist. There is no word for feminist in the Arabic language. She was, as she proclaimed on numerous occasions, a fighter in the war for women's liberation. You could hear it in her voice, see it in her eyes, a blazing fire that was born from experiencing horrible emotional and physical trauma, all because she was born a girl child in a man's world. Many called Nawal El-Saadawi a scandalous woman who held scandalous beliefs, in a part of the world where even the hint of a scandal could get a woman killed. But she did not care. She would not back down. She was relentless in her criticism of political and patriarchal fundamentalist religious systems that kept women in a state of fear, exploitation, and subservience. I call her a mighty force that blew across the Arab world, leaving seeds of change in her wake. She marched. She rallied. She stood arm in arm with her fellow revolutionaries, calling out all those who would keep her sisters in bondage. When was the last time you had to stand up for your beliefs, speak out against something or someone that went against your values, risked public or personal reprisal for speaking your mind? Nawal El-Saadawi is the Brightlighter who teaches us that it takes immense courage to stand strong in our beliefs and firmly grounded in our values, no matter the cost. She was a savage and dangerous woman speaking the truth. And the truth, my sisters? is savage and dangerous. To learn more about Nawal El-Saadawi, visit the AquataineProject.com and click on her picture on the episodes page. There you'll find links and resources about the life and times of this fiery Brightlighter, who stands as a symbol for women's empowerment. After reading several of her books, including Woman at Point Zero and A Daughter of Isis, I've come to more fully appreciate her passion, courage, and dedication in the war for women's liberation in her native country of Egypt and throughout the Arab world. You'll also find resources to help you identify your beliefs and values and craft your unique personal vision statement. Don't forget to connect with me on the Aquitaine Project Facebook group, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Until next time, my Brightlighters, speak up, speak out, and speak loud so your sisters can find you.